Chapter 2. Fear is my companion. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Psalm 23:4, New King James Version. In October 2013, things took a turn for the worse. This time it would take a while for me to get back on my feet. This time I truly believe I stared death in the face. I tried to go to a women's conference at the church we were attending, once again believing that if I could make it there, I would find healing. God was sure to heal me if I just took this step of faith, or at least that is what I was being told. So I went, and I panicked. My heart skipped beats, and I just knew I was going to die. I had to leave, so once again, I felt like a failure as a Christian. Why was it that everyone else could have more faith and overcome the things they faced? And I was too weak to do the same. After this, things went downhill, and I had to stop going to church again. I grew physically sick and couldn't eat. This time, though, the eating issue got even worse than before. I wasn't eating anything, and I was losing weight rapidly. I feared that at any moment my heart would stop. From morning to night, it skipped beats. Evenings, sleep did not come easily, and I would wake up in the morning with severe leg cramps. Several nights while my heart was thumping and thudding, we ended up in the ER. To once again be told I had anxiety and panic attacks, and my heart was fine. I was low in magnesium and potassium, along with several other vitamins and minerals because of malnutrition, but eating made me frightened and very sick. I went from 125 pounds this time to 102 pounds within a couple of months. Adrenaline again coursed through my veins all day and night. But this time it also made my heart beat erratically. I was sure at any point it would be my last breath. I could not leave my house and didn't want to be alone. Luckily, by this time my husband was working from home for his job. Occasionally, he had to leave for business trips, and my parents would stay with me. They said I looked like I was on death's door. My clothes hung off my frame, and I could not make it to the kitchen from the couch without my heart racing and feeling like I would pass out. I couldn't make it from my bed to the bathroom, and often had to use the trash can beside my bed as my toilet. I would look in the mirror and see this shell of a person who used to be there. I hated myself because I couldn't get better. How had it gotten this bad, and most of all, where was God? I had done everything I was supposed to do. I had jumped through all the hoops. I had gone to church, and I had become a leader in the church. I constantly prayed and read my Bible. I lived a clean life, in fact, so much that most people thought I was a prude. I had done everything a good Christian should do, and here I was close to death. Where was my God? Why had he abandoned me? As before, I would question, was he even real? And if he was, why didn't he care that I was in so much pain and turmoil? And why wouldn't he take it all away? Affecting my marriage. Not only was I suffering, but my marriage was suffering. My husband didn't know how to handle what I was experiencing. He had to take care of our boys and do all the housework because I had no strength to do anything. I wrote a prayer request at a church during this time, and the lady emailed me back and told me I needed to stop being selfish and stop making my husband do all my chores. So many times during this period, it was reaching out to well-meaning Christians and getting answers like this that sent me further into a spiral of bondage and hating myself. It came to a point where I had to see my doctor, and she recommended that my husband take me to the ER, where they would evaluate me to see if I needed to go to a special facility. She said they wouldn't put me in the psych ward because I wasn't suicidal. Believe me, it wasn't for lack of having suicidal thoughts, but my biggest fear was death. I figured by now that it wasn't God's fault, it was my fault. My faith was too weak, and I was such a failure. Once again, I wasn't good enough. I couldn't pick myself up by my bootstraps and be what God needed me to be. I was a failure as a wife and as a mother. Why wouldn't God just let me die? In my mind, that was what was going to happen. He would let me die so that my husband could enjoy life with someone else, and my kids would have the mother they deserved. So we went to the ER to be evaluated. I remember this was one of the darkest days of my life. I cried and cried because I didn't understand how my family could bring me here and think about leaving me somewhere away from them. The room they put me in at the ER was very sterile and had been designed to house someone who was suicidal. There was only a cot-type thing. They made me take off everything and put on a gown and booties so there would be nothing I could hurt myself with. They brought me nerve medication and started doing an evaluation. Afterward, they determined I was not bad enough to go to the psych ward, but I did need to go to a facility to get help. So my husband and family drove me to this house that we had to tour. I just knew if they left me there, I would never see my family again, because I would die. It was dark and drab, and I was crying and asking them to please not leave me. I did not stay. We drove home, and I promised everyone I would do better. I would do all the things I needed to do and have more faith, and I would get better. The doctor did convince me to start on anxiety medication. We tried 4 or 5 different medicines, and the side effects were so bad that I would panic every time I had to take the pills. Eventually, I found a type that I could take 1/4 of the pill each time and did that until I could go off the pills entirely. There would be days that I would cry all day. I remember my dad sitting on the couch holding me and having tears in his eyes because he couldn't help. He and my mom were so scared I wouldn't live through it this time. I think I went through quite a few days that I didn't pray at all, because why pray when no one was listening? Or if they were listening, they didn't care. There were days when I didn't feel like I could take another breath, but somehow God gave me breath again. Slowly, I began to be able to eat. I knew my husband was frustrated with me, and I was sure that he would walk out the door any day and never come back. I was at the point that the only people I could see without panicking were my husband and my kids. It was even hard for me to see my own parents, and I would have to take a pill right before they came. I would panic just trying to get into a car and go somewhere, and if my husband was out of my sight for long, I would freak out. He had his office in the basement, and I would go down there during the day to keep from being alone. Resisting bad thoughts, no one understood what was going on inside me. Everyone thought I could just control it somehow. They thought I just needed to make up my mind to be better and have more faith, and it would disappear. No one knew the thoughts of suicide that twirled around in my head, all the time knowing I wouldn't kill myself because I was so afraid of death. At the same time, I'd hear the voice of the enemy saying, "It's the only way out, and everyone will be better off when you are gone." I distinctly remember taking a shower one night later on in the battle, and I saw myself laying in the shower drenched in blood. I could feel darkness invading my entire being and whispering there was no other way. Only me and God truly knew the thoughts and fears that were a whirlwind in my mind every moment of every day and every hour of the night. I felt like I was worth nothing to anyone. I just existed for some reason, and God wouldn't let me die. There was one day I remember when my husband and I were sitting in the church parking lot, waiting for my son to come out of a meeting, and my husband was frustrated with me because of something he wanted to do, but I didn't want him to do it because I didn't want to be left alone. He opened the car door and got out and said, "That's it. I can't take this anymore." I started panicking because I just knew this was it. He was leaving me for good. I immediately took my 1/4 of a pill, knowing that taking that was going to cause side effects and make me panic more. My husband got back into the car and we headed home. I didn't dare tell him that my heart was racing and skipping beats and I was having trouble breathing, because I knew there would be no sympathy right now. Hearing from God. As we drove home, I stared out the window and suddenly heard this: "When you walk through the fires of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. You will walk out unharmed and unbound, not even smelling like smoke. Better than you were before. My word will not return to me void, but it will do what it was sent to do." I knew I had heard it so clearly, yet at the same time, I questioned if it was God speaking. Later, I told my husband about what I heard. A few days later, he listened to a preaching on a podcast and told me that the preacher said exactly what I told him I heard. So I listened to the podcast, and sure enough, it was the exact thing, word for word, even the exact translation God had used when I heard it. There is no way it could have been a coincidence, because this used 3 or 4 different scriptures simultaneously. Isaiah 43:2, "When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you." Daniel 3:25 and 27, "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men unbound walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god." Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell like smoke. And Isaiah 55:11, "It is the same with my word. I send it out, and it always produces fruit. It will accomplish all I want it to, and it will prosper everywhere I send it." I held on to that word during the rough days and panic attacks ahead. I gradually began to eat some, get some strength, and get myself back up on my feet again. I was doing everything I knew to do in the natural, and somehow, still in my heart of hearts, holding on to the hope that God would come through for me and that He was real and He cared. Another thing, I stopped doing everything I was taught by the church to do. God began speaking to me in my quiet time. I began to hear His voice in a way that I have never heard Him before. He began to sound like a loving father instead of someone waiting to punish me and kill me at any moment. I was learning about rest, and this was when things began to turn for me. Hallelujah.